So 1942, they claimed eminent domain, and the next thing you know, all the houses were houses that weren't moved fast enough were set afire. They choose to take this 75 families from this place. This is where I grew. This is what I was taught, and how to fish and do well at it, and to bring in the harvest. That's what my grandfather knew. That's what my father knew, and that's what they taught me. And well, all that's gone now. It still rests in my mind, their knowledge of the environment and how to take care of the environment. They did a good job. But time brings on changes.
In the days and weeks and months and years after emancipation in the 1860s, that land had been the Harris Neck Plantation. It was a rice plantation. It had slaves. But the owner of the plantation said, you know, if I can just live out my life here, I will not only obviously honor emancipation, but also deed the land to my former slaves. And there were about between 70 and 80 families that took land ownership as part of that act by that widow of a former plantation owner. These former slaves and their descendants owned it outright. You certainly had freed black people in the years after the Civil War. Very few of them were property owners of any significance or landowners.
It was just like a town, a city, a culture within itself.
They harvested oysters, they harvested crabs, they fished, and lived on Harris Neck, on that point of land.
In 1942, you have people from the federal government that came by and says, we want your land. Never mind that right up the road from where we were, there was 3,500 acres that was far more suitable for what the military needed to do at that point in time. But they wanted our land.
You have to understand, from the time the federal government first set foot on Harris Neck until the time they started burning and bulldozing homes to make room for this air base, and this was days and maybe a week or two, not months.
And then they find out that the land was too unstable to carry out the plan that they had with the bombs and the planes.
My cousin Wilson, he's born in a lean-to outside of Harris Neck. His mother was pregnant when they ran them off. My mom was 12 years old.
When a white man from the government came to a black community and said, we're taking your land and here's what we're giving you for it, there wasn't a lot of room for argument.
Government is something else. When you're involved with the government, you better know what you're doing.
They told them that they would, use the land until after the war was over, and then they would give the land back to them. And so everybody had that understanding that they would get the land back.
And the Congress in 1948 passed amendments to the Surplus Properties Act, and it changed the rules. It changed the rules, not just for Harris Neck, but nationwide. It said, now that we have all this surplus property because the war's over, we're going to say if the federal government can use it, obviously the federal government will find a use for it. We'll then offer it to the state government and see if the state government has any use for it. We'll then offer it to local governments. And only if the local government says it doesn't have any use for it, then we'll offer it to the previous landowners. The federal government didn't have a use for it, the state government didn't have a use for it, and so McIntosh County, the local government there, said, we'll take it, we'll build a civil air patrol base, and we'll use it for civilian air patrol purposes. So the promise was broken at that point. The local government used some of the old housing to turn it into a brothel and casino that operated with the full sanction of the local government there in the 50s. There was never any meaningful effort to create a civilian air patrol base. The federal government took it back and just honestly by default said, you know, let's make it a national wildlife refuge. We can do that. We don't have anything else to do with it, but let's make it that. Let's make it a national wildlife refuge. And so in the early 1960s was born the Harris Neck National Wildlife Refuge.
Now this is how I started. I started with this book, and I think I picked it up from one of the bookstores, and it just, breaks down, you write your information in it. Yeah, now here, that's a picture of Amelia Dolly, which was Miss Mary Moran's mother. When they list the enslaved people, but they just list them by first names. But I know there's Mary, Clara, John, and if I see that and I say, this must be our family right here, and that's how we could detect some of those. Everybody now has gotten into, wanting to know their heritage and where they came from. Now that's the one thing, you can call me 3 o'clock in the morning and say, I need to ask you about some genealogy, and I'll wake up.
What connects me to Harris Neck is my mother and my grandmother.
I wish that my grandmother was still here, but she's not here. I loved her dearly, still I love her. And there is a weight, there is a responsibility that I have been charged with to fight for her.
I think the biggest thing for me is when I go to Harris Neck. I just know latitudinally, when you go straight across, you're gonna cross the Atlantic. You're gonna hit Africa.
Our ancestors were brilliant. They were hard workers.
Like my grandmother, she could knit nets. My dad, he could build boats. Amazed me about them, but later on discovered they used no paperwork. All the training or all the knowledge that they had was in their head.
And I hadn't really been back there since I was a child, but I was walking the land on Harris Neck, and I remember when I was a child going to the pier, and we go crabbing, and we go shrimping out there, and we go fishing, and we get oysters, all of those things, and I was able to walk those land, and I was able to see those big live oak trees and see the Spanish moss. There was a spirit that was there that welcomed me.
When they were brought here, enslaved here, this is what they knew, this is all they knew, and they made it work. They cleared the land, they tilled the land, and made it successful. The entire lifeblood is in that small piece of property.
Because we a soldier in the army. And she would always say, my hands is on the gut supply. And when I get old, I'm going to continue to fight and fight until I can't fight anymore. The funny thing about Maxine, she just a loving. You're not a bird, are you? Right? Huh? All right. You're not a bird. You're human, right? Right, baby. But she just amazing, man. The way she walks and talks to me, you think it's the person in the house. But she is my company. The people always have lived off the land and the river. Why not keep it going on? You see, and gonna limit to the small people how much shrimp they can catch. That's not right. They don't limit the big boats. They go out there and catch 100, 200 boxes of shrimp. It's not right. Small man got to live too.
With nothing in me feels like the Fish and Wildlife have given Harrisnet descendants the respect that they deserved.
Growing up, I remember my folk telling me, hey, look, we're not going to take everything because we can take everything. You got to leave some for seed. That was their thing. Leave some for seed. So, we were conservationists before conservation was cool.
The federal authorities, Department of Interior, declared that the last endangered species that relied on Harris Neck was no longer endangered. It had made a full recovery. So you now have hey, look, you don't need endangered species to have a good reason for a wildlife refuge. They're not just for endangered species. But the primary ecological purpose for having a wildlife refuge went away when the last endangered species in Harris Neck recovered and was declared by the Fish and Wildlife Service to no longer be endangered.
The amount of land is less than 0.2% of the holdings of fish and wildlife throughout the country. They could give Harris Neck back tomorrow and they wouldn't miss it. It's not going to make a dent in what they're doing, but they already own it. So they're not going to give it up.
We presented different things to Fish and Wildlife, and the areas that we really want back are the areas that they don't really use.
So we spent years with these administrative officials, Fish and Wildlife, Department of Interior, but we just never had a champion within the Fish and Wildlife Service says, you know what, we can still have a refuge. The refuge is 2,600 acres. We can take a portion of that and return it to these descendants.
We're asking for a portion of what we had.
Yes, we have to take care of our planet. We've done an absolutely terrible job of it so far, and we need to do better, but we also have to take care of our fellow human beings. And taking care of our fellow human beings, in the case of Harris Neck, has been almost completely ignored for almost 80 years.
What's amazing is I stayed at the same complex for my whole career. That's unheard of. But the environment's a testament to that because it's so diverse here. The tidal marsh is beautiful. We got maritime forest. Earlier on in my career, I didn't realize what it took to maintain a national wildlife refuge with 500,000 visitors. And that's one thing that inspires me is restoring a habitat, whether it be eliminating the invasive exotic species or either improving an existing habitat and watching the wildlife respond, the migratory birds, whether it be waterfowl or songbirds. All our refuges are unique, and it's important to have places where people can go and enjoy wildlife and learn about wildlife.
So the Harris Neck National Wildlife Refuge is ecologically important first and foremost because it's part of the National Wildlife Refuge system, which has 568 refuge units across the United States and territories. And so it contributes to that larger system perspective of providing places for wildlife by providing habitat and also for people to enjoy. So the ecological significance of Harris Neck really is about the coastal barrier system that it supports, the resident threatened wood stork, but then also lots of other wading birds, alligators, and other types of wildlife that would be here for the maritime shrub scrub habitat. I believe that they're right in the aspect that if that's how they feel, that there will never be resolution until there's a transfer of land of some sort. Those are beliefs that they hold, and I respect those beliefs. I can only work within the bounds that have been set to me legislatively. And so just simply transferring land, there's a process to do that. And it takes congressional action, it takes those levels of conversation. Without engagement and without thinking about how we continue to build that partnership, I believe we just stand at odds and we can't even create different, possible outcomes in the future.
Well, you know that I'm glad to be in this number one more time. Just to hear you sing. Oh, one more time. Just to hear you sing. Just one more time. Well, you know that I'm glad to be in that number one more time. Oh, one more time. Oh, one more time. Oh, one more time. Lord, oh, one more time. Well, you know that I'm glad to be in this number one more time. You got a big one.
I don't like it.
I hope it's not a singer.
That's what he is.
You were sitting down there too long.
Boy,
A crab?
a oyster.
Oh.
I'm so bad I get the bottom of the sea.
Oh yeah. Well, you're fishing now.
I've heard the expression "stay in your place," and the people of color just sort of knew what they were to do, how far they were to go.
Had this been a white community, would this have happened to them? And my answer to that is unequivocally no.
You're helpless trying to get back what is rightfully yours. You almost feel like this is an overcast of slavery.
They were people who knew their worth. And when it comes to a black community, we're not perceived or received as equal.
Why? Is it because of the color of my skin? What have I done so terrible that you can't give me equal rights, equal opportunity?
So back in the 40s, you were out of slavery, but you were still second-class citizens.
If they wanted the land and they needed it, sure, as citizens, we would understand that. Those people had nowhere to go. They had no other place. This was home. It's like you running me out of my home and telling me to do the best I can, have a nice day. No.
A local resident early in our advocacy of this project called it a land grab. Well, that's rich, right? I mean, the land was grabbed all right. It was grabbed by the federal government away from people that owned it.
I think before the federal government took the land, they should have considered where the land was and how soft the ground could have been or may have been before building an airstrip there, before even assuming to build an airstrip there. Do I think they were justified? Absolutely not.
And now they were paid something. It's far from clear that they were offered anything approaching the fair market value of their property.
And they only paid them pennies on the dollar compared to what they paid the white landowners on that same land.
My family was very prominent in Harrisnet. We had a lot of businesses there where we fairly compensated. My grandmother never received anything from that.
Our people were independent. They were independent. And so to me, that independence was a threat to the powers that be. And then that's what the fight is about to this day. Make Harrisnet whole.
This cemetery has been here before my grandmother, and her headstone here, Amelia Shaw Dolly, and last month, this is my mother's gravesite. And if you notice, a lot of the markers, a lot of these people died during and after 1945. We equate that to the point that a lot of the old people, hopes were destroyed when the land was taken from them. And some of them, perfectly physically well, just gave up and died. But I come here, in my good moments, I come here in my worst moments, and I quiet down, knowing that we could have done better for them, but we did the best we possibly knew how. And that's it. And I'm just glad we still have a cemetery in which we can come to. Like I said, it's a traumatic situation that I just have to live through. I can't think of it in a way that would make me angry, because then I would become the people who are trying to not let us have it.
What frustrates me about the situation in Harris Neck, it's the dishonesty, promises made with no intentions of having promises kept.
There's no long answer. It's just that we don't seem to be getting the property back. It's, we have meeting after meeting, and lawyers after lawyers, trips after trips going to Washington, Atlanta, and you build up your hope that this is the right way to go, and then you don't see anything happening.
Imagine the trauma of thinking of my great-great-grandfather, Mustafa, what he worked so hard to build for him and his family, his granddaughter, which was my grandmother, what he worked so hard to build a legacy, and the dream that he had for them, for us in Harris Neck, and to have that stripped and taken away from him, and he's helpless, he couldn't do anything.
My ancestors, they're gone. They didn't get to see, the return of the land. And they have been fighting for so long, and it's so many of them now that wanted it so badly.
That one theme is still there. Why? Why did you do it? And why can't you repair the situation?
How long do we have to ask? How long do we have to beg and plead to have what was rightfully ours?
My cousin Mary Moran, she lived to be 100 years old, and she never saw it. That really saddens me. It's taken all this time, and here she is 100 and not able to see the return. And I just wonder how many more of us would have to live that long and still not see it. It's time. It's time. We've been counted out, but we still have hope. We still have love. We still have courage.
Given the fact that I told my mom on her deathbed that we would fight for the land until we got it back, and not in bad shape for an older guy. So I'll keep fighting as long as I have breath in my body.
One day it will happen. Whether it's in my lifetime, I pray that it is.
Yeah, we wouldn't work as hard as we did if we didn't feel that, we would see it.
You may not win the fight, but man, you got to go in determined not to lose.
In numbers, we can do more than we could do individually. Especially since we have done this, been working on the Harris Neck Land Trust. I have gotten to know so many family members.
And a lot of, we've been in the struggle for a long time now. And everybody wants to know, well, then why do you continue to go on, defeat after defeat? Well, the way we look at it is that there is no defeat until we quit. And we've resolved not to quit.
My enslaved ancestors fought, got their freedom, fought through segregation, fought through Jim Crow. I owe it to them. I'm standing on their shoulders. I owe it to them to give all I have to make sure that this happened.
I'm reminded of what Dr. King said. He says, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. So it affects all of us. And imagine yourself, if you had that injustice perpetrated upon you, would you not want somebody else to come in and help you? They should gladly help the Harris Neck Land Trust because they're eradicating injustice.
My prayer is that this fight isn't carried on to my kids.
It just takes somebody with courage. It seems to me courage is lacking in this day and time.
Congress can, without destroying the National Wildlife Refuge of Harris Neck, without harming any endangered species or frankly any species at all, could return these families and these descendants to this land with a fairly straightforward piece of legislation that ought to garner bipartisan support. And that's what we're asking the Congress to do.
I just honestly believe that we will see the results of all the hard work.
In our minds, when we figure it all out, when we have that blank canvas of 300 or 500 acres of land down there, and then we can go to work and we can make it whatever we want it to be. I thought 50 years from now, I'd like my great-grands and great-great-grandchildren to be able to go to Harris Neck, and they can say, this is where Papa lived, this is where our land was at one point in time, this is what it was. It'll be a memorial, if you will. I'd like for the community to be a memorial.
I believe that in the next 2 to 3 years, we will either pass legislation returning a portion of the land to the Harris Neck descendants, or we'll have to accept that Congress is just never going to do that. We may have to accept something less than a return, a full return of the land.
If we got land back tomorrow, we will have forgotten how long it took. The value is in the return of the land. And it's also the values in the struggle. It's the fight.
Like if I woke up and it was, we'd gotten back, I would say, well, I told you, justice has prevailed, and go back to sleep.
So yeah, that day when it happens, it's going to be. I'm just going to say that you need to be there. You're going to want to be there. It's going to be amazing.
If they come and say, the land is yours, it will be total jubilation. It would be something, I'm sure there'll be lots of tears, lots of hugging and kissing and shouting and just praising Almighty God, because this is what we fought for all these years, and that it will let us know that our fighting was not in vain. And those people, and I'm sure we'll be, sad for those who have gone on, did not get to see this. But we, pray that they'll be watching down from heaven.
Do the right thing. Return the land to the people of Harris Neck.
I was born by the river in a little old tent. And just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it is. I've been too long in living, but I'm afraid to die. Don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it is.